Deep in the heart of Eastern Europe, there's a land whose name seems to whisper old, old stories. It's a country of thick forests and vast marshes, a place that sits right at a historical crossroads, constantly shaped by the empires that rose and fell all around it. This is the story of Belarus. You've probably heard it called that, right? Europe's last dictatorship. It's the headline that sticks, the label that dominates the news. But you have to wonder, is that all there is to it? Behind that one simple phrase, there's a history of unbelievable struggle, incredible resilience, and a really complex identity that's been forged over 1,000 years. To figure out if that label is the whole story, we have to go deeper, right into the heart of its past. So, to really get a handle on Belarus, we've got to start with two things: its name and its land. Seriously, these two things are the foundation for everything else that happened. The name Belarus literally translates to white Rus. But why white? Well, historians aren't totally sure, but they've got some fascinating theories. One idea is that it set apart the early Christians who lived here from their pagan neighbors. Another theory points to something simpler: the traditional white clothing people wore. And then there's a third, more strategic idea, that these were the lands of the Rus that the Mongol Tatars never conquered, so they stayed white or free. You see, this is a country with no mountains, no seacoast. It's a huge, mostly flat plain, just covered in forests and wetlands. And these things, they weren't just pretty scenery. They shaped the country's destiny. The rivers, they became superhighways for both trade and invasion. And those forests and marshes, they became the perfect hiding spots, sanctuaries for resistance fighters. This very landscape has molded the character of the Belarusian people for centuries. Because of where it is, Belarus has had a really turbulent history. I mean, it's hard to think of another European nation that has been so consistently stuck between bigger, more powerful neighbors. Its whole story is one of being swallowed up, assimilated, and just fighting to survive. Just look at this timeline. For over 1,000 years, the lands of Belarus were just passed from one empire to another. First, it was part of the early Slavic state of Kievan Rus. Then it joined the powerful Grand Duchy of Lithuania, where its language was actually the official language of the state. After that, it was absorbed into the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and finally sucked into the massive Russian Empire. Every single change brought a new power, a new official language, and a new dominant culture. And these weren't gentle transitions. Under the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, a process called Polonization meant the Polish language and Catholicism became dominant. Then, under the Russian Empire, a policy of Russification did pretty much the same thing, but with the Russian language and Orthodox Christianity. They even banned the Belarusian language from being taught in schools. Can you imagine? It was a constant, centuries-long struggle just to hold on to a unique culture. And then, in the chaos of World War I, a flicker of hope. As the Russian Empire collapsed, the Belarusian People's Republic was declared. It was the first real shot at a modern, independent country, but it was just so short-lived. Crushed between the advancing armies of Soviet Russia and Poland, it lasted for barely a year. That brief taste of freedom was followed by the single most traumatic event in the nation's entire history, an era of devastation so complete it would redefine Belarus forever. During World War II, Belarus lost an estimated 1/4 of its entire population. Just let that sink in for a second. 1 out of every 4 people. Man, woman, and child. No other republic in the entire Soviet Union was hit that hard. And the physical destruction was just as mind-boggling. During the Nazi occupation, 209 cities and towns were wiped off the map. The country was just systematically taken apart, building by building, person by person. And this wasn't an accident of war. It was deliberate policy. The Nazis' General Plan Ost, the General Plan for the East, was a blueprint for genocide. The plan was crystal clear: get rid of the local population to make living space for German settlers. The suffering was intentional and it was systematic. But out of that unbelievable horror, something incredible was born: a defining national story. The story of resistance against absolutely impossible odds. From those deep forests and murky swamps emerged one of the largest partisan resistance movements in all of Europe. And this legacy, this fight, became the absolute core of the post-war Belarusian identity. The country even became known as the Partisan Republic. For decades after the war, former partisans ran the government, and their story was cemented in powerful films and books, shaping how Belarusians see themselves even today. Which brings us to today, to the modern era, and to the central contradictions that really define Belarus. So, when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Belarus finally got its independence for good, and hopes were really high for a new democratic future. But the presidential election in 1994, the one that brought Alexander Lukashenko to power, is now seen by most as the country's first and its last truly free and fair election. And that has led to this central paradox. On one hand, the country has kept a very Soviet-style economy where the government controls huge chunks of industry. But on the other hand, the United Nations ranks it as having very high human development. That means high levels of literacy, education, and life expectancy. It's this bizarre contrast between its political system and its social progress. You can also see the legacy of all that historical pressure in the language people speak. While almost 85% of citizens say they're ethnically Belarusian, more than 70% speak Russian as their main language at home. The national language, Belarusian, is only spoken daily by about a quarter of the people. It's a really clear reminder of how long the nation's culture has been under pressure. So we're left with this really complex picture, a nation with an ancient name, forged in the fires of foreign rule, absolutely devastated by war, and then defined by a powerful legacy of resistance. A country full of paradoxes, sitting once again at a huge crossroads. After 1,000 years of just surviving, its future is still waiting to be written.